All right, so I love that you let us do recorded answers to these assignments because it makes my life a lot easier, and I've been doing a lot of typing today. So for Module 7, Ethics and Design, as far as like the ethical and legal ramifications of taking credit for work that we didn't do or I didn't do, there are a lot of them. You can get sued. It's copyright infringement. Ethically, honestly, it bothers me to do something like that, which is why I've never taken credit for someone else's work. Personally, I think it's abhorrent. I've always, when I've used like music and stuff for pieces, even with the Creative Commons license and stuff like that, I've had to do video and things like that. I've always given the person credit and credits and stuff like that because we've used repositories for music for other projects in the past. A couple classes ago, I had to do a project for like a cosmetic line, and I did a video for it, and I found music from a free site, and I made sure to give the person who did the music, it was kind of edgy and everything, credit for the music that I used, even though it was free. An artist can use it and everything. It's still, the right thing to do. But I didn't need music, and obviously I can't just go borrow any other person's music for it. Like, as much as I love Chris Cornell and everything, I can't just go use his work without getting consent. As far as me creating stuff like that myself, unfortunately, no, I am not a musician. I am not that talented. I can paint. I used to draw. Unfortunately, I can't really do that as well anymore. My hand shakes too much. Really good at sewing. That comes in real handy. But as far as my multi-talents with cooking and all sorts of other things, music is not one of my fortes. That's normally stuff I need to borrow from other people. On occasion, I have some local friends that are musicians. They've let me use their work too. A lot of times, if I ask them, hey, can I use a clip from one of your performances, they'll give me a go ahead. But I also tend to post the hell out of it on Facebook and plug them as much as I can. So for them, it's like free advertising. So they're normally pretty cool with it. As far as a project, I've created many elements to complete. Wow. With my rendering, that normally requires a lot of pieces. Normally you have to add the model, and then the clothing, and then the backgrounds and everything. But you got to pose everything, and you got to add the lighting and all that other stuff. And if you're adding more than one model into the background, it can be very multifaceted, and it can take a while. So the more things in it, the longer it takes to render. As a good example, some of the other in-depth projects that I did, like for that cosmetic line, we had to create like mailers, we had to create a video, we had to create, mood boards for it. We had to create like a website. I mean, we did all sorts of crazy stuff for that project. So it was a lot of stages, and it was a lot of different parts. It was an interesting project. I like the stuff where I can be creative like that. It was a lot of fun, However, again, a lot of different steps, a lot of different stages. It was kind of super condensed because we only have 11 weeks, so that was a lot of work in a short period of time, and considering my work schedule. We were doing testing at the time in the office I was based out of at the time. It was grueling. I totally adore park testing. It's so much fun. As far as like someone taking credit for my work, luckily the few people that have asked to use some of my stuff have either paid for it or asked if they can use it. I haven't seen my work stolen, so to speak, at least not yet. However, I would be rather pissed off. They are very time intensive, especially the rendered work. That's why I charge so much for some of the pieces. I start at $150 and go up depending on how many figures you want in it. I've actually said no to people for doing things. I did get asked to do a rendered piece for a hate group, and I refused to do it because of moral and ethic purposes, I refuse to put my name on something like that. But I would be very upset because of the amount of time and effort and love that goes into those pieces. I put a lot of myself into that work, and I would be exceptionally angry if someone stole the work. As far as it getting tricky in the area of free for commercial use stuff, a lot of stuff, they're pretty good about telling you if it's free for use, but I still feel you need to give the person credit. You know, when it's a single design or even if it's a company, I'm praying that the company does give the actual designer credit. Sometimes they don't, so you have to credit the actual company. I've noticed that with some of the web dev companies that give you templates and stuff like that. They freelance them out, and then they have a bunch of people working behind the scenes to design those templates, and then they don't give the actual artist credit, which is kind of crappy. With these assets, that means that when the company takes them, that means that the artist itself doesn't get credit and that they can just use them. And that's where the licensure gets kind of weird. So that means the artist doesn't own the license to it, even though it's being used for free. So if they leave the company, they don't get to keep their work. The company does. And that's the crappy side of that. With music, same kind of thing. If music was created or an animation was created for a large company, the person who created it may not have credit for their work anymore unless they sign some sort of contract. So some of the free stuff is great, but I like to try and find sites where the individuals get credit for their work so I can credit the individual. It's better for their portfolios. You know, that means that that person can get tagged or whatever, and people can still find their work individually. The businesses are great to a point, but they tend to shortchange the people behind the scenes, and that's kind of the downside. And that's where it gets into that gray area where, yeah, they make things accessible. However, the person who created it doesn't always get credit for it. And even though they're getting paid and everything, if they ever leave that company, they can't take their work with them, which is kind of, I hate to say this, shitty is a good way of putting that. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I mean, essentially, there are a lot of ethics when it comes to design. You can't just steal other people's stuff. It's not good. You're a horrible person if you do. Art tends to be very personal. It doesn't matter what form it's in. You know, a lot of artists put their heart and soul into stuff. I know I do. I really wish I had more time to work on the stuff that I love. Right now with school and everything, it's impossible. But, you know, I'm hoping after I graduate I'll have more time to go back to the rendering. And because of that, you know, there's so much love and soul in pieces that people put together, even if it's just a web page, that, you know, to steal it is just a disgusting thing to do. So definitely, you know, don't steal work. But that should answer the question. You obviously know where to find me via email and stuff like that, but hopefully that gives you what you're looking for. Have a good week.